You seem to have offered seven different budget amendments this year. Can you tell me why and what they do?
Sure. Had I spent more time, I could have probably offered 20, to be honest with you. I became a little concerned about just the budget request, the size of the budget request. And at $59.5 billion, I try to read through the budget. Each year we get this really thick book that we get to look through. And so I try to read through that. And some things that jumped out at me. 5 of those budget requests are to reduce the budget. Again, the growth of the budget concerned me. And I think we're taking on some things that I did not think were healthy for the state of Tennessee. I love my state troopers. The folks that I get to work with here, they're great men and women. But the budget request from the governor has us growing by more than 100 troopers, taking us up to over 1,500 troopers. That's hard on my local law enforcement, my sheriffs, my chiefs of police, because they're competing for the same good people to do those jobs. And so if we're hiring an additional 100 plus troopers, that pool of people are going to be drawn to the higher pay, and the trooper pay is 60 plus thousand starting annually. One of my counties is right at 50, and the other is in the mid to upper 40s. And it makes it tough on them. And I've got to tell you, I think centralizing law enforcement in Nashville is not the right thing to do. And I've spoken with local law enforcement people that think we're trending that way. And so one of my requests for $38 million was not to fund that this year.
What about the other 4?
Well, the Arts Commission. I support the arts. You and I were speaking about graphic design. Mm-hmm. One of my sons is a graphic designer. And both my sons play guitar. I am not so fortunate as play any instruments, but I'm fully supportive of the arts, but I don't think it's the role of government to fund the arts. I don't think it's the role of government to pick the winners and losers that compete for space or for market with the arts, whatever the product is, whether it's dance or music or whatever. And so the budget request from the governor is about $13 million for the Arts Commission. And just under $3 million of that is for salaries for the people that work in the Arts Commission. And the remainder is for grants. So my request was to take $10 million out of the budget request, which would thereby convert the Arts Commission to a group that was supportive and a group of advocacy, but not a dispenser of tax dollars. I think there's better places to put those $10 million. We had a $60 million budget item that I call out in one of my budget requests to reduce. And the governor has a great idea. I'm sure it's a well-intended idea anyways, to help people get into starter homes, right? But to provide $60 million of our tax dollars so that construction loans are zero interest for starter homes may not be the role of government. And I've talked to colleagues and they're like, well, we already do THDA this and we already provide these incentives. It doesn't mean we should continue those things or expand those. But my greater concern with that $60 million, other than expenditure of our tax money, Adelia, is if you infuse a large amount of cash into any market, we've just lived this with the Biden era, we create a false signal of demand. And any time that the demand for a product or a service exceeds the capacity to manufacture or deliver that product or service, it causes the prices to go up. It causes an inflationary impact in the cost. I'm afraid that this $60 million is going to just take the price of a starter home up. We just heard we're going to increase the demand by what we're doing. We're going to bring more buyers into the picture. It's going to be like a negative, something intended for good that's going to have a negative result, I'm afraid. So I took that approach. We shouldn't fund it. It's not the role of government to do that. And we're not behaving right now Some of the bureaucrats in Nashville aren't behaving like we're a small government controlled spending, and we need to get to that. One of my budget requests for a reduction in dollars was $10,000. The Department of Health. The Department of Health does lots of good things across the state of Tennessee, I'm convinced. But on their website, they say at every site they will deliver or provide ECP, emergency contraceptive pills. I said in committee, budget committee, subcommittee, I'm a Christian. I think that life begins at conception. And I think that if we're issuing these pills, also known as abortion pills, morning after pills, abortion pills, we're doing that with tax dollars. We shouldn't be doing that. We need to stop that. So there's $10,000 just to address those funds. And hopefully it sends a message to the Department of Health and awakens the governor's office that we Tennesseans should not be paying for those. We call ourselves a life state, and we are. I am. Let's act like it. Let's stop doing that. We have $5.8 million in the budget request that I've asked to be extracted, going to the University of Tennessee Office of Diversity and Inclusion. I'm a UT graduate. I did my MBA at UT, one of the executive MBA programs. But we're sending that to an office that is not staffed, and we shouldn't be doing that. We're sending the wrong message. I have constituents. I said this on the record. I have constituents. I know others who aren't constituents, both students and family, that find themselves in courses at UT where their worldview is not just questioned. They're not just asked to articulate why they have a worldview on something, but they're forced to comply by organizations, counseling organizations that have their tentacles in UT. This DEI and CRT mess is alive and well in some of our public universities, and we shouldn't be sending $5.8 million to encourage that.
And you said there's nobody in that office?
Not according to the budget. There's zero headcount in the staffings, but we're sending $5.8 million there. And, we do lots of good things at UT. UT Knoxville, UT Martin. I'm a proud wearer of the orange. But I don't know if this was a request from UT or something that the governor's budget team just pulled together. We don't need to send that $5.8 million there. And I know this is going to ruffle some feathers. That's okay. There's supposed to be a little tension in this process. I have lots of good colleagues that are working to do the right thing and provide for what the needs are in their districts, just as I am mine. But those $60 million chunks and those $38 million staffing, so that's going to continue each year, every year, to fund those positions. Maybe there's a better way to spend that money. I didn't offer this in the amendment, I just took it out, but maybe if we're going to put that much money in law enforcement, maybe we should help the pension plans and the TCRS for our local deputies and our local police officers, incentivize them and close the gap. So, again, those probably won't be that popular. I did have a couple that added a few dollars to the budget as well.
And what did those add dollars to the budget for?
The Tennessee Department of Veteran Services, I think, do a really good job. Unfortunately, as our budget has grown in the last 6 years, by my estimate, the budget request has grown 59%. The Department of Veteran Services budget has gone down. And so I found it odd that I'd heard them ask for 4 veteran service officers to do outreach so they could visit jails, nursing homes, and hospitals. And with the veteran suicide rate that we have now, being able to reach out and touch those veterans is an important thing to do. The governor's budget only provided 2 of those, so I simply asked for 2 more. I think they had a fully burdened cost of just under $90,000 per year, so I put $200,000 of that 110-ish million that I asked to be taken out back toward veteran services. And then there's a $5 million budget request that I added in for what we typically grew up calling halfway houses, community counseling, folks that have battled addiction or even incarceration, and they're trying to get back into the normal flow of society. That's an important element, I think, in the healing process. And so the Department of Mental Health and Substance Abuse, I think it requested $11 million for that. I think that's what their request was, and I asked for $5 million in the amendment.
And did you do any research before this on the budget's history in Tennessee?
I did. That goes back to what I think was the growth. 6 years ago, Governor Haslam's last budget request, I think, was $37.5 billion. And this year we're at 59.5. I have a thought on that. And again, many of my conservative friends in the House and in the Senate, we want to control growth. There's going to be a tendency as the DOGE effort, I think, takes place in D.C. And we're seeing that our dollars there have been spent on crazy things and sit all around this world, and likely, so that politicians and political operatives get kickbacks. And as those things are defunded, if Congress does their job and pulls some of that money back and codifies such on closing some of these departments, there's going to be a tendency in Tennessee for us to fill those vacuums. There's going to be a hole left. We've got to be careful not to do that. I think we have to ask first that question, is it constitutional? And we have abandoned our states' rights position in many cases for a long time, for decades. One might even offer for a century or more, that we states have allowed the federal government to usurp its authority over us with departments of education and energy and environmental protection agencies and things that are not clearly lined out as part of the 18 enumerated powers that we, the states, have given Congress. But I think we have to be careful as we pull back on that, and hopefully we're having a 10th Amendment awakening in these United States. Hopefully we have a much stronger awakening here in Tennessee, a 10th Amendment awakening, that we will practice nullification of those foolish and unconstitutional federal requirements that come down. Often they come packaged with $1, but they have a hook on the backside of that dollar that drags us into some woke social agenda or some anti-American campaign. And so we Tennesseans are going to have to be careful not to fall into that. And I know that's going to ruffle a few feathers to say that, but, I say let the people keep more of their money. Let's stop collecting taxes on groceries, on food. I know we tried last year. I tried last year. I know a representative tried this year, Representative Davis. I think that our grandparents and our grandchildren would benefit by just keeping that 4% that we currently pay in sales tax on groceries and spend it. And I think there's lots of areas to look at there. So we leave the money in the pockets of the Tennesseans and leave it closer to home when it's got to be spent as revenue in government. And let's decrease the size of this bureaucracy in Nashville that is developing an appetite that concerns me.